just wanna make you laugh. I just wanna see that smile. Baby, we're only here for a little while. I just wanna hold you till we fall asleep. I want love, I want us, I want you, I want me, I want peace.
All right, happy hump day. Welcome back to another episode of Morning Coffee with Rick Alexander. Today I want to chat to you a little bit about your role in your life, and we're going to talk about fundamentally why that is the thing that's actually determining how your life ends up. You know, I talk about narratives a lot, and they're hard to conceptualize sometimes because it's like, well, what is a narrative? It's essentially a storyline that's happening in your head about who you are, about the things that are happening in your life, and then you're living them out. I'm jumping right into this episode, by the way, so just stay tuned. It shouldn't be a long one. But today what I want to talk to you about is, what is your relationship with the most traumatic things that have ever happened to you? Now, this is a heavy episode, and this is not going to be solved in the next 5 to 10 minutes. But it's something that you should definitely start thinking about. I'm starting to focus a lot of my content on inner healing because it's almost this abstract thing that people talk about a lot. And I remember feeling like I was broken inside, but not knowing where to start with inner healing. And so a lot of these episodes are kind of focused on that as of recently, because it's like I did sort of figure that out, and I have done a lot of healing. And of course, that journey is never ending, and you're always sort of on it. But that feeling of healing what's broken within is, I really can't put a price on it, because you allow yourself to be happy and to go after all the things that you want, which is, of course, what I want for you. So today's sort of self-healing principle is to define your role in all of the worst things that have ever happened to you, or what by you would consider the worst things to ever happen to you. So I could say traumatic things, because I personally, if you were to ask me about the worst things, quote unquote, that happened to me in my life, those might actually be the best things, like the breakups and the heartache and the things that really hurt. It's like, yeah, but that's where I figured out how to live this life. Like you can learn, like, you don't learn very much in love. It's an amazing place to be, right? It's probably the highest expression of humanity. But it's the lows where you're like really learning things. And so, you know, I think back on the most traumatic experiences in my life, and I really do look at them as these incredible learning experiences. And I look at them with just total gratitude, because once again, that's where I really learned the shit that matters. That's how I learned. You know, one of the things I do is when I'm in a really painful situation, I try to describe that pain in my notebook, because I want to remember that pain, because I don't want to do whatever damn dumb thing I did that landed me there was. And so I try to hold on to that pain and just remember it, because I know it's going to fade, but I also know there's an incredible lesson buried in there. But I got to digress, because I talk about that a lot, but today what I want to talk about is, like, fundamentally, what was your role in that thing that went wrong in your life? Whether you see yourself as a victim or empowered is huge. And so when it comes to self-healing, a lot of times we can't heal. We feel broken because we feel like we've been victimized by certain situations. And that victimization, that victimhood that we all fall into, is actually a matter of perception. And you're only a victim if you allow yourself to be one, essentially. Now, there are extenuating circumstances like oppression and things like that, but that's not what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about today is, like, when you think about the traumatic things you've gone through, the breakups, the whatever it is, where do you see yourself as having played a role in that thing? The people that are healed, the people that are moved on, are the people that see their role and see their role as something that's empowered them to move forward. See, if you see your role in something like a breakup as a negative thing, then you're going to cause that negative thing to continue to stay in your life, because, again, you live out the narratives in your head. You're going to live out the storyline that you're telling yourself around traumatic incidences. And so the way that you sort of course correct from that is to redefine your role in that thing. So if you think about, like, a bad breakup, it's like, okay, so this person, it feels like a rejection, right? They've chosen to go elsewhere. They've chosen to go without you in this life. And that feels like it's like this personal thing on you. But what you begin to understand is that whenever people do or don't show up for you, that says way more about them than you. Like, whatever people are doing to you, that's about them. That's not about you. And I know that's cliche. It's hard to get your mind around. It feels abstract, especially when you're going through something negative. But that couldn't be closer to the truth. But the way that this shows up, and the reason it's important, is because a lot of times, I know, like, right after a bad breakup, myself, I remember thinking, like, why I was so bad. Like essentially, like I looked at this person as like, I couldn't live up to that. I couldn't be what they needed. And that's my fault. And that's one narrative that you could take from that situation, right? And you could take the same situation from being fired from a job, things not working out, business ventures going awry, whatever it is, right? It's like you weren't good enough, and so that thing fell apart. Or you can understand that, again, when people show up or don't show up for you, that says more about them than you, almost has nothing to do with you if you're being super realistic about it. But then further, if you can understand what your role was in that thing, you can correct it. And now you have a roadmap to a better life. And that's what's important. That's why you have to define your role, the role that you played in everything that you've done. Things can't always just be happening to you or you're fucked. You'll never be able to actually improve your life. You have to look at the role that you played and what went wrong so that you don't do it again. That's how you empower yourself. That's how you can take a narrative and you can spin it and you can actually go do better with it. You could actually be better. You know, I first sat with that narrative of like, man, I'm not good enough for a couple months. And that sucked. And I kind of worked through it with writing and just running and the different things that I do. But then I came to understand like, yeah, but like how does this story end? That's what you got to ask yourself. It's not going to end like this. Can't end with me being a victim. Like, this is fucking crazy, you know? And so for me, I decided like, I want to be good for somebody. Like, I want to figure this thing out. And so the way I did that is like, I defined my role in all these things. It's like, where did I do really right? What did I do really wrong? Because the truth is you're always both, right? You've always done things wrong. You've always done things right. And the way that you get better in life is you just slowly do the things right more and you do the things wrong less. And fundamentally, that's actually all that's happening. And so if you can inventory the traumatic things that have happened in your life, well, you stand a chance of making sure they don't happen again or they happen on a lesser scale because you can correct all of the ways, if you're being super honest with yourself, that you contributed to that thing. See, because you weren't a victim of it, and that's what matters. You did stuff, you acted in certain ways. Again, we make our decisions until our decisions make us. You've acted in certain ways, and then that contributed to that outcome in some way. And so to identify that, to not beat yourself up about it, don't get mad about it. It's all in the past now, it doesn't matter. What matters is, look, how do you want this story to end? Is this what you want your legacy to be? This thing ending you, like you being a victim of whatever circumstance in your life? And I know it's easier for me to talk about. I don't want that to be lost here. Like, I know it's a lot easier to talk about than to actually implement, but doing an inventory of all of the trauma that's happened in my life, realizing the role I did and didn't play and being very realistic about that gave me a roadmap for going into the future valiantly, for going into the future with my eyes open and to do the right thing by myself and my life and the people around me. You know, I tweeted out at the beginning of this week, you should recognize that you're the bullet that someone else dodged at some point in this life. You got to take yourself out of the star role sometimes in your own movie to see where you missed the mark and to see where you can improve and do better. But be very realistic about the narrative and understand it doesn't say anything about you or your character or your being as a whole. You just acted in certain ways that contributed to a certain outcome. And if you want a different outcome, then you just got to change the way that you acted. And it doesn't have to be more than that. It doesn't have to have emotions tied into it. I know it does because life gets messy and weird. And we tend to be all of the things that we're going through. But give yourself some space. Define your role to the things that have gone wrong in your life or even gone right. And that will give you a roadmap for a better future. That is the definition of a roadmap for a better future. It's the only way you learn. So hopefully this makes sense. Hopefully it wasn't too much lecturing at you. But I love you guys. We'll talk tomorrow on Morning Coffee.
I found a home close to yours, on the outside of the fence. Oh, how I'd love to mark the grave and set our names on a stone. It feels so far away. I'm calling it.
the emptiness. I act on love, but sometimes my love is the deadliest. I feel the mood change when the high hits and these lights dim. These people are strange, I'm a stranger, storm riding. She loves the shade below these leaves, her body lays beneath this tree. I placed a grave, replaced her moon with winds of rain, and now she's mine. Forevermore she sleeps beneath my garden. When flowers grow from bloody soil, it makes some ultraviolet, my love.